How's the car in qualifying?
Slow. Yeah, it was pretty slow. Wasn't last like we were last year, but it was close.
Does it matter for tomorrow?
No, I mean, like I have zero doubt in my mind that whether I'll have a car that's capable of winning tomorrow. So, I certainly wanted to make sure the cars got more grip than what we had here in the previous race, and I think we got that.
From a team owner's perspective, as NASCAR's gone into streaming and everything, what's been the reception like from sponsors and stuff? Have they been more receptive? Are they less receptive? Is it going to sell them harder? Just kind of the overall what that's been like.
I think it's probably a better question for like Loletta or Shannon Hooper or someone than me, because they talk directly with the 2311 sponsors. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a transition period there, and we're all trying to educate our fans on kind of where they can find everything.
Is it been, looking at Joe Gibbs Racing, it's kind of been a transition. You guys, for a long time, they had an anchor sponsor for 30 races, whether it was FedEx or M&M's. What has it been like at JGR now over the last few years as you guys have made this transition?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good talks going on, a lot of good meetings and whatnot as regards to the 11 car, and obviously when you have someone that's been part of the sport for 20 years like FedEx was, it certainly makes things a lot easier. But this is a different time, and certainly we feel confident that we'll get these things sold throughout the year.
Did you get any reaction from anybody at NASCAR about your podcast and what you said? And were you expecting any, or at least any, have some discussions about what can be done on super speedways?
Do you mean like in a negative light or anything?
No, either negative, or are they like, yeah, we know this is an issue and we're trying to work on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where
or
you've
suck
got
it up,
kind
or
of,
what?
yeah, probably all the above. Yeah, I'd probably say all the above. I think if you ask the competitors, they probably like one sort of thing, and even that's probably a varied answer. And I think NASCAR probably likes another thing, and TV maybe wants another thing. So trying to balance that is going to be really, really tough. But ultimately, I think as a competitor of myself, I mentioned it, that it's you would like to get rewarded when you make the right moves. Like it's very frustrating that kind of is out of your hands at most times on super speedways, and we'd like to put it more in our hands, and I think that certainly getting the drag out of the car would be a fantastic start. I know Dale Jr. mentioned it as well. Just the transition that we had, we're still running the same speed in the pack as we were pre-next gen. So the only difference is now we're running 13 miles an hour slower in qualifying. So that shows you that the fastest way to make these cars go is to run into each other. And so that's what we do, and that's what ultimately causes wrecks. If you took drag out, made the cars faster by themselves, I really don't know that we would run that much faster in the pack if we would at all. And it probably would clean up some of the big hammer tags that we've been doing in drafting.
Do you expect the same tomorrow?
I don't think so. I think this is kind of a hybrid racetrack, although it will very much look like a super speedway. You still you can't run that close to someone in the corners here, especially when you're in the second, third lane. So I think it's a type of super speedway racing, but this is kind of more what I'd like to see Daytona and Talladega turn into, truthfully.
How much do you look to Phoenix to kind of use as a test session for the season finale?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying things. Last year was a little different because I just, we were trying to help the 45 car out, and so we just kind of ran his stuff all weekend, no questions asked. And in the spring last year, we were a top 2 or 3 car, but consistently year over year, we've been a 5th, 7th place car in the finale. And if you look at the same cars up front, I mean, you pretty much can script the top 5, and they've been pretty consistent when it comes to the championship race. And so what we have to do to get better is we got to come up with new ideas, and I think that's certainly on the forefront of everyone at Joe Gibbs Racing to try to get better at it, because if we want to have a shot at it, you certainly got to get better at that track.
So Phoenix becomes like a test session for the teams?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, there's no way we're going to go back there with the same thing that we had and think that we're just automatically going to be faster. So yes, it is essentially. I mean, it's a good test anyway because it's kind of the first shorter track that we go to in the year. We're measuring up all kinds of different things, and we're not just testing for that specific race in the fall. We're testing for Loudon, we're testing for Richmond. There's all kinds of things, and certainly with that new option tire that they're going to have there, that's likely going to be the championship race tire as long as it doesn't blow out. So it could completely change a game.
How do you feel? You said in the past you feel like Charles could be a game changer for the 23 team. How do you feel? Why so? How's he going to change that?
Yeah, I just think his leadership is really, really strong. He's very, very confident for a rookie crew chief. Not only rookie crew chief with a new driver, but just being in the Cup Series and learning these cars and what make them go. I just see a confidence within him and strength in his knowledge already that it very much impresses me.
As a sports fan, I'm sure you probably saw, at least pay attention to the U.S.-Canada hockey game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a best-on-best type of event. I understand nationalistic things were involved that kind of raised the interest. But as somebody who looks at things from a bigger perspective, are there things that can be taken or learned from something like that into like an in-season tournament, which you push for a long time, as we get ready for the first one later this year?
Well, I think it's more, when you think about, what do you need for an all-star race? First you got to answer, what do you want, right? And I think that first thing we want as a sanctioning body is good ratings. And I think that the all-star ratings have been pretty good, even relative to our regular season. So I don't know that there's necessarily a problem there. But I do, it did get my mind thinking about, another exhibition. Not that I want to race anymore, but just, how can you create a team or manufacture a race where it's all head-to-head, it's head-to-heads and things like that. I mean, there is a way. It's just I don't really have the time to think about it right now. But it was interesting that how can you create something like that in racing where you have a team aspect, but yet competitors are maybe going head-to-head for a few laps and see what happens, and the winner moves on. So all that would be pretty compelling.
Drivers from the South versus drivers from the Midwest, California, West Coast versus East Coast.
There's tons of different ways you could break it up for sure. But it's then we got individual teams as well, and I'm not sure we're going to be helping each other out with setups, to try to make sure our north, south, east, west wins.
But could it be a thing where you have like a team challenge almost? Like it's not an individual thing, but it's a team challenge where you have 15 different teams competing. All their drivers are adding up points, that kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, the only
just spitballing here.
Yeah, me too. I mean, but the only difference is every team's got a different amount of cars, and
you can work.
Yeah, I know you can. You can certainly do that, and I mean, maybe it'd be interesting to see if JGR HMS, which driver are you going to put on the bench? Maybe bring your best three.
Maybe you split them up by two, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly ways, but it's going to have to take someone with far more creative mind.
Or is this what's wrong with? There's been so much discussion about entertainment and the sport. Is almost like this discussion, almost what's wrong, because there's so much focus on that and ratings as opposed to.
If you look at the sports that are really struggling in the in the all-star type landscape, it's ones where the athletes are risking health. I don't think that we are. We're not as concerned about going out there in an all-star race, making a move and then getting hurt. It's not at the forefront of us. But when a basketball player chooses to charge in a lane and someone's standing there. It's just, they're thinking about, it's a business decision at that point. Same with a football player. So they're at a disadvantage for that reason. And I think that, ours has worked because you see us going all out.
When you see what happened to the 19 car, do you go back to your guys at 2311 and say, okay, how are we installing these splitter bases and what's going on? Or do you, bring the hands off, or what?
I'm pretty hands off on it, truthfully. I kind of let them make all the decisions on how to put the car together and whatnot. But there's certainly a strong alliance with 2311 and JGR that when you look at the processes, we certainly look at that and say is it a process issue that we got to make sure that we don't do on our end.
Will this track ever become an intermediate style package racetrack again?
If you took the spoiler down, yeah. I mean, certainly, I think if you just took the Lexan off of the spoiler and did nothing else, we would see really a strategic 1.5 mile racetrack. We've already got the engine, that is pretty much the same. I think that probably NASCAR's next move, though, is going to be to soften the tire. This tire is far harder than anything that we run anywhere else. So, if they want to keep us bunched up, they're going to put a softer tire on us. And if they want us to, the drivers and the teams to really have a huge effect and handling be involved, then I would advocate to take drag and downforce it.
Looking back at Denny, I know that Daytona's Daytona, but were you impressed with Ryan's performance last weekend?
Yeah, I thought I was really happy with kind of his performance, and I'd seen that out of him on super speedways before. I actually was part of a inside 10 laps to go race with him where I was second, he was fourth pushing, so it wasn't the first time, so I wasn't terribly surprised, but yeah, it was a great performance by him, and obviously a great save at the end.
Looking back at the cautions last week there at the end, what's the importance to you in drivers self-critiquing and self-policing other drivers? And then
yeah, it's going to be hard for us because I mentioned earlier that the fastest way to make these cars go in super speedways is to run into each other. It is because we have so much drag and we go so slow by ourselves that the best way to make us go faster is to use other cars and push them forward. So until you change that, I just don't think that we're going to change our style. We're going to continue to kind of roll the dice and do what we were doing last week.
I know you kind of mentioned briefly in your podcast John Hunter Nemechek.
Mm-hmm.
I know he recently said that he's trying to make a name for himself. Have
Yeah.
y'all talked? Or?
Yeah. I said that those comments were probably taken a little out of context, and if anything, he was just the first name that was in my head, so it was actually not a negative thing, but it was more so around it was going to be easier for people to accept kind of the all-out crash and then somebody winning, being that it was Byron, and he is a legitimate contender, and it certainly can be used as a catalyst to say, well, it is legitimate because look, he won it back to back. John Hunter hasn't won yet, so my statement was, if you had a new winner there or someone that was very unexpected or hadn't won, would you feel differently about it? So he just was the name that popped up in my head at that moment. Nothing with him.
Are you still pursuing Southside? Are you part of that process at all?
I'm not. No. I just I had some talks with it, but I kind of just left it up to the state and the county to, let me know what their next steps, how they'd like me involved in the next steps, and I haven't heard back.
Denny, is there a lot of inventory left on 11 this season, or is there just here and there races?
I'm not sure. Truthfully, I mean, that's probably a question for Gibbs, but we've got, a lot of races coming up here where you've got the anchor partners that have been on the 11 for quite some time, Sport Clips and Yahoo over the last few years and whatnot. So, the schedule's filling out.
Real quick for here.
Last question.
Where's the for you? Is it still out front in a pack here, or is there a different place to drive here?
I mean, I would like to be up front, truthfully, with especially this type of racetrack. We're all going to want to be up front at a super speedway anyway, but I think this one in particular, aerodynamics play a little bit more of a factor, so I would want to be the guy out front hoping to hold them off.